Hey, everybody. Fascinating chat today as we dive into the world of conversational analytics with the CMO at CallMiner. Eric, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for being here. Really excited for this chat. You've been around for a while in the conversational analytics space, and this is an exciting time, to say the least, in the contact center. Maybe start with some introductions to yourself and the mission at CallMiner and how it's evolved over the last few years.
Sure thing. So I'm Eric Williamson, Chief Marketing Officer at CallMiner. And as you mentioned before, we are the global leader in conversation analytics or conversation intelligence, depending on which analyst you are. They kind of flip-flop around either one. Essentially, what that means is our platform ingests and then analyzes 100% of all forms of customer interactions, whether those are calls, obviously, or text, chat, social, like review surveys and things like that. All that gets analyzed through artificial intelligence, and essentially it gives back guidance to customer service agents. So think large contact centers in real time, and then essentially it provides a lot of other artificial intelligence summarization, redaction, and guidance.
That's tremendous. And of course, data and AI, machine learning are top of mind to all of us today. So maybe let's dive into the buzzwords. How are you using AI ML to help businesses get more from their customer interactions?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I think Gen AI is on the, it's the media hype buzzword right now, mostly because of ChatGPT last year. But artificial intelligence has been in our platform, artificial intelligence and machine learning, for quite some time. And then we've applied basically new implementations of Gen AI over the course of the last 12 months with some of the innovations that have happened with all the different LLMs. But ultimately, the artificial intelligence and the machine learning is how we're able to analyze all that data at scale. So you think of millions, just one particular enterprise level company, you're talking about millions and millions of customer interactions that are happening, every day if it's a big enough company. So in order for all of that to be analyzed at scale so that it provides real-time guidance back, you have to have some combination of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Where the Gen AI components come in, or where we've at least focused on implementing them, are areas where efficiencies, where things that can be automated. So I'll give you a tactical example. You've got a customer service agent that completes a call with a customer who's complaining because their cable subscription is not, they're trying to cancel it, whatever the situation is. At the end of that customer service interaction, in the past, the agent would have to write up some sort of summary. But now, for things like that, you can have Gen AI essentially automate that summary, and then the agent can just make a couple tweaks to that in an editing form. So it basically becomes a productivity multiplier for places in the workflow where you can see that automation is needed.
Yeah, pretty powerful. And customer or consumer expectations keep changing. How do you help your clients kind of stay ahead of these changes and deliver better outcomes, better customer experiences?
Sure. The biggest thing right now, like you mentioned before, artificial intelligence is kind of at the top of everybody's mind. And the biggest thing we're doing right now is helping them navigate what, is a little bit like the wild, wild west. Because what these companies are finding is, the vast majority of them, not shocking, they are already investing, or they're planning on investing in AI and Gen AI in some form. I think we have an annual survey that we do, and I think it's over 85% are investing or planning to invest. The irony is, though, that they're not 100% sure which one to invest in, or how to actually measure the ROI on that. So we're giving them quite a bit of guidance, especially on areas of risk mitigation, because you could definitely make a wrong turn in implementing Gen AI. So we're helping them essentially with their AI governance and policies, beyond just giving them advice on how to apply, our platform appropriately.
Yeah, it sounds so important. I mean, this area is evolving so fast with automation and AI, and there's a real challenge with IT and contact center leaders on keeping up, particularly given the amount of legacy that's out there in the contact center world. So how do you think about helping, your clients modernize their contact center and keep up with these unbelievable changes that we're seeing?
Sure. So what we've developed is essentially, and we're in the process of making this our official policy and recommendation. But if you think about a framework that goes from one end where it's completely 100% no AI and just human controlled, all the way over to the other side, which would be 100% autonomous, where you've got essentially an AI agent doing all the work. So there's different levels of that along that spectrum. And so we've essentially developed this framework, and we're able to then look at the different use cases that a particular customer has and identify which part in the spectrum is the appropriate implementation of AI. And that's going to change that's going to change slightly for different customers. If you think about a company that is perhaps in financial services or healthcare, where you've got extreme regulation, which really makes compliance important for them, they're going to be a little bit more risk averse than someone perhaps, let's say, who's in technology. And so they may have a different implementation approach along that spectrum because of their willingness to take on a little bit more risk. Beyond that, I think the biggest thing we're helping them do is look at their workflows for each use case and find those areas that can be automated. I mentioned the summarization case study a second ago. That's kind of an obvious one that most customers that have enterprise level customer service centers are rapidly adopting. Other areas are going to be, automating more of the redaction that happens to redact out PII, or if you're in healthcare, things that would become an issue for HIPAA compliance. So redacting those out automatically and trusting that is another area that we're helping advise on. The biggest thing would be, don't try to do 50 different things all at once. Take a little bit more of a measured approach to it. Find a couple of those automation examples in those workflows and pick one or two projects. Find some success there, learn from those, and then you can go after a few more.
All great advice, very practical. You mentioned healthcare. You work with all kinds of companies in different industries. Any favorite anecdotes or stories about how your clients are using CallMiner in a unique way or maybe a different way?
Sure. So yeah, our main verticals are, you've got a lot of financial services. Healthcare is an emerging one for us. And I do think that right now they're utilizing us both for patient access, but also patient experience in the healthcare space. I do think that as we see telemedicine continue to increase as a form of how medical providers are able to provide service remotely, that's going to become something that they'll be able to tap into our platform more. On the financial services side, we're working with some of the largest financial institutions out there. You think of the amount of customer service that they need to deploy. They're definitely using our platform. Then the other verticals are going to be tech, telecommunications, and then CPG. Those are some of the biggest ones for us. In the UK, you see a little less healthcare, obviously, and more retail. For the most part, right now we are just working very closely with each of our clients to understand how to guide them on implementing different aspects of Gen AI using our platform, but also various integrations.
Very cool. And so all those industries really have major concerns about data privacy. In Europe, you mentioned the UK, data protection. How do you think about security, compliance, and regulation in all your various clients' industries?
Absolutely. So we, purposefully for our platform, regardless of Gen AI, we have to meet certain standards, whether it's GDPR, CRPA, and HIPAA compliance, et cetera. We have different levels of compliance that each industry requires. So our goal is essentially just to make sure that our platform is capable of all those things, so that we're able to meet their needs.
Yeah, that's super important. Um, you recently did your own research around upcoming trends in AI and customer insights. I think folks can see that on your website. But what are some of the biggest impacts or trends that you observed that folks should be getting ready for?
Sure. Yeah, we do. We have an annual CX landscape report, and this is the third annual version of that. So
Mm,
we're able to, ask a lot of the same questions. It's a global survey among CXOs as well as CMOs and contact center executives, and essentially it spans everything from customer service and CX questions, but obviously a heavy dose of AI the last couple of years. So we talked about it earlier. Some of the biggest, I'll start with some of the biggest learnings from this year's survey versus previous years around AI. As I mentioned, I think over 85% of all the respondents are either already invested in or will be investing in implementing more AI into their tech stack, specifically their customer service tech stack. Where the confusion tends to pop up for them, and this comes up in the data, is that 45% of them aren't really sure because there's so many options out there. They're not sure which AI would be the best thing to pursue. So a lot of them are utilizing various consulting firms for advice. So you're seeing a lot of similar to how consulting firms are helping with digital transformation. You're seeing a lot of consulting and advisors that are guiding where these companies will spend their money. Once they have implemented it, another area of I guess confusion for them is how ultimately am I able to show my CEO that we're getting a positive return on investment. So and this, I think, goes a lot to some of the wild west that I mentioned before. That's the last big area of concern, which is how do we make sure we don't end up being the next Air Canada? If you're familiar with that story, where the chatbot essentially gave some really bad, made up its own policy basically, and it ended up costing Air Canada quite a bit of PR drama, but also they lost a court case because of it. So in the areas of policy around governance and privacy, that's basically like we were talking about before, where we have that framework we've been advising on. Beyond that, the rest of the survey focuses in on if you think about where CX in general as an industry has spent most of its life, it's essentially in surveys. So solicited feedback. And today that still holds true, which is not surprising. I think last year it was over 70% of the respondents were still primarily just using solicited feedback or surveys as their main source of data for how they measure CX. But that's gone down a little bit below 65% this year, which is a good sign, because ultimately what we are advising is use your surveys, but also make sure you're tapping into all that unsolicited data, which would be all those other customer interactions, because I think that gives you a much truer read on the customer experience, as well as generally just who your customers are and what they're interested in, what they're angry about. You're not going to get all that out of a survey, because surveys are mostly polarizing.
Got it. Makes sense. I see here you were recently named a leader in the Forrester Wave survey. Speaking of surveys, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're up against some very large, multi-billion-dollar companies in this space and doing quite well. What's been your secret sauce or secret to success with
Well,
conversational analytics?
we've been a pioneer in this space for,
Mm,
as you mentioned before, decades. So we kind of have a history of firsts.
mm,
Ultimately, one of the first to even begin recording and analyzing. At the time it was just calls, but obviously we've shifted to omnichannel. But one of the first to start delivering real-time agent guidance.
mm.
And then I think what I think has been helpful for us in the most recent years is we took a very pragmatic approach when everything was blowing up with all the news about ChatGPT. I think you had some of the players in the industry really just jumped in and started just applying, for lack of a better term, ChatGPT to everything, regardless of thinking about the compliance risks that we were talking about earlier. I think we took a little bit of a more pragmatic approach. We didn't move slow, but we were very focused in where we were applying some of the new aspects of Gen AI to our platform, and that boded us well at this point where we're seeing the industry go, where we're seeing all the new models for Gen AI are heading. We seem to have picked the right path earlier than some of the other ones who have had to backtrack a bit. So I think being extremely selective, strategic about where you're applying Gen AI and taking a very responsible approach, and that goes back to that framework I was mentioning before, has boded well for us. And we do love the fact that we've scored very well in a couple different Forrester waves, one for customer service, conversation intelligence for customer service, and then one for real-time revenue execution, which is essentially focused on the outbound selling motion that happens within contact centers.
Oh, well done. So there are a lot of companies that are still just getting started with conversational analytics, kind of starting this journey. And there's so many options out there, including a lot of, low code, no code kind of tools to build stuff on your own. But what's your advice for getting the most out of, your tools or any approach really
Sure.
in this space if you're just getting started?
I think so. Like we mentioned before, there's still a lot of companies out there that aren't tapping into all the valuable data within the contact center. We primarily focus on enterprise level customers. So in most cases, they already have a significant CX effort, but then they usually have multiple contact centers. In some cases, they've got their own and they outsource to BPOs for the rest. So the key is connecting the dots between those two efforts in order to really have a better impact on understanding your customers and impacting CX. So I would say for those companies who have not started looking at both solicited and unsolicited data, start to ask the questions, make the connection between the contact center executives and some of your CX executives, whether they live in marketing or there's an actual CXO. I think just having those initial discussions, because what can happen very quickly, especially now with Gen AI, is you can spin up multiple dashboards that I think could be really valuable for that CXO, and that can be your test case. In terms of just applying conversation intelligence to your contact center, the biggest thing would be to, I think, do some self-assessment on how mature your contact center environment is in terms of its processes. Do you already have a bunch of business analysts on staff? If you don't, then I think that's going to be an area where Gen AI will help subsidize that some, but you're still going to need some analysts to help you with your data strategy. And so a sure sign for a contact center that maybe isn't as mature is one that doesn't have barely any analysts. And in most cases, that might be a recipe for, you might want a lighter type analytics platform versus one that's more robust like ours.
Oh, fantastic advice. We're headed up to the year end, a very busy time. What are you looking forward to, you and the team out there in the run up to the end of the year? What's on your mind?
Sure. Well, just like everybody else, we're trying to, close the year out strong. We're a privately held company, so we are keeping an eye on our numbers so that we can look at, fiscal 25 and understand, what sort of roadmap we have in front of us. I suspect that next year we are going to have a continued focus on, implementation of AI and Gen AI into the different parts of the workflow. In addition, just evolving some of the things that we've already released. A couple of our most recent announcements that we made at our annual customer event early in October. So we have something that's called AI, CallMiner AI Assist. And you can think of it similar to how different companies have branded this as Copilot, but you'll have
Mm.
this AI assistant that essentially is embedded into several different aspects of our platform. So that rolls out here in the next few weeks. And we also announced and did a press release. Next year, we'll be releasing essentially our take on what surveys are. So it's a slightly different take on surveys, but it's an outreach. It's an outreach essentially feature. If you think of it as you finished an interaction with this company, and afterwards, automatically AI is going to write this summary of the interaction you had with the customer service agent, even if it was a phone call, as well as the action items that were occurred on that call. It sends it to the customer, and this is also a way that you can start capturing some of those CSAT, NPS. So it's a slightly different alt. We feel like we have an opportunity to essentially try to disrupt some of the legacy survey features that are out there, and then offer that as part of our platform as well. And that'll help us align, I think, closer with some of those CX individuals that still have not adopted the unsolicited data, and perhaps we can help bridge that gap.
Well, sounds brilliant. So I'm headed out of town for a couple of weeks in Barcelona for a couple of events.
Lucky
I
you.
know we're both in Boston. Any travel coming up? The warmer places,
We're from
destinations?
My wife and I are both from Texas originally, so we may go back to see family, but we'll probably be here for Christmas, though. We'll see.
Good stuff. Well, fascinating chat. Incredible work you're doing. Very insightful. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And thanks everyone for listening, watching, and sharing as always. Take care. Bye-bye.